Every home has a corner for broken things. They no longer work, but people still cannot throw them away. Today, while cleaning that old corner, I found this electric fan. The cord was bitten by mice, and the body was covered in dust. At first it looked ready for the trash, but the guard and blade were still good. That made me curious. Maybe this old fan still had one last chance. I start by removing the fan guard. In many homes, adults often remind children, never put your hand near a running fan. It looks simple, but it kept a safe distance from the fast-spinning blade inside. Then I remove the blade. I want to see the shaft and the inner mechanism clearly. With old DIY parts, only layer by layer can we know what is truly broken and what is still worth keeping. After removing the guard and blade, I go deeper into the motor section. This is the original fan motor assembly, with the oscillation gearbox on top. For this old fan, it used to be the heart of the whole machine. But I had checked it before. The motor assembly is damaged, so I will not repair or reuse it. The gearbox is unstable too. Next, I remove the stator, or stator winding. It normally creates the magnetic field for the rotor, but this winding is already damaged. Then I take out the rotor and shaft. This part is also worn out and cannot be reused, so the main motor parts are removed from today's build. But when I take apart old devices, I do not only look at what still runs, I also look at shapes, screw holes and mounting points. Sometimes one forgotten part can open a completely different idea. And here it is. This piece is still solid. It is the front motor cover, also the original shaft support. It has a center hole and useful screw positions. So I will keep it for today's DIY project. To reuse this part, I need a small piece of wood. It must fit the front motor cover and the original shaft support. At first it looks like a simple scrap of wood, but here it becomes an important adapter plate. Can you guess why? If it is positioned wrong, the whole mechanism can be misaligned. If it is centered well, the parts will sit straighter, stronger and more stable. First I place the metal cover on the wood and mark the screw holes. Then I mark the center hole. That center point will guide the shaft later. Now I drill each hole slowly. With any rotating mechanism, even a small offset can make the motor vibrate, the shaft wobble, or the whole system run unstable. Now, let's check the parts shelf. I often keep old parts from broken machines. Sometimes the right part is not new. It is hiding among forgotten scraps. Looks like I found it. Do you know what this is? This is a brushed DC motor. Its size looks right, and it may become the main part of today's project. Next, I need a 5x8mm rigid coupling. It connects the DC motor shaft to another shaft with a larger diameter. I slide one side onto the motor shaft, align it, and tighten the screws. This coupling must stay centered. If it slips or sits off center, the mechanism can wobble when the motor spins. In small DIY mechanics, this tiny part can decide how smooth the final result will be. Next, I need a short iron shaft. This piece was cut from the old fan, about 5 centimeters long. I will not reuse the old motor assembly, but this shaft is still straight and strong enough to work as a middle drive shaft. I insert it into the other side of the rigid coupling and tighten the screws. If both shafts stay aligned, the movement will be much smoother. Do you remember the wooden piece I marked and drilled earlier? Now it starts to show its real purpose. I place the DC motor assembly with the coupling and iron shaft installed onto this wooden plate. The wood transfers the mounting position of the new motor to the old fan frame. In simple words, it works like a homemade adapter plate. Without this middle part, fixing the motor to the old fan body would be much harder. I align the motor so the shaft passes through the center hole correctly. Then I fasten each screw position. This step needs to be checked more than once. If the motor tilts even a little, the fan blade later may not spin evenly. When the motor is secured on the wood, I install the front motor cover that I kept earlier. This part helps hold the frame and keep the shaft in a better direction. At this point, the most important mechanical section is taking shape. From a broken fan, a small piece of wood, a DC motor, and a few shaft parts, I now have a new drive base for this fan. But mechanics alone are not enough. The electrical control section below will decide whether this idea can really work. Next, I move down to the fan base. The old wiring is still inside, but after changing the build direction, these wires are no longer suitable, so I cut them out to prepare for a cleaner new wiring system. If old and new wires are mixed together, the next connections can become messy and hard to check. In electrical DIY, removing what is no longer needed often makes the next step safer and cleaner. And this is the next important part. This is a DC motor speed controller, often called a PWM dimmer. It controls the speed of the DC motor. Instead of only turning the motor on or off, it lets the speed change more smoothly. In simple words, this part will help me control the airflow later. After placing the speed controller inside the base, I drill 2 small holes. They are not for decoration. One hole will bring the control knob outside. The other will be for the power input wire. Can you guess which one controls the speed? The small front hole will be used for the potentiometer. This is the knob that controls the motor speed. When I turn it, the motor can speed up or slow down smoothly. That means the airflow later will not have only one fixed level. I can adjust it gently, medium, or stronger when needed. For a homemade fan, this smooth speed control is very useful. The small rear hole will be for the power input wire to the speed controller. I pass the wire through the base so the line stays neat inside. When I work on electrical DIY projects, I try to keep wires from being stretched, pinched, or placed too close to moving parts. A clean wire path makes the device look better. More importantly, it reduces the risk of broken wires, loose joints, or unwanted contact. After the wire is in place, I check its path before continuing the circuit. Then I run another wire from the speed controller up to the fan neck. This wire will power the DC motor above. It must be long enough to follow the body, but not too loose. If it is too tight, the joint may be pulled when the fan angle changes. If it is too long, it can get messy inside. So I adjust the length carefully before fixing it in place. Now I install the new motor assembly onto the fan neck. I align it carefully and tighten it firmly. If the neck is loose, the fan head may vibrate when the motor spins. Then I connect the speed controller wires to the DC motor. I solder the joints to make them stronger and more stable. Finally, I check the positive and negative wires. Now I start reassembling the outer parts of the fan. First, the fan base. After the controller and wires are placed neatly inside, the base needs to be closed firmly. Next, I install the blade back onto the shaft. This is where we can see why centering was so important earlier. If the shaft is not straight, the blade will wobble when it spins. Then I install the fan guard again. The guard makes the fan look complete and keeps a safe distance from the spinning blade. At this point, today's DIY project is almost finished. From the outside, it still looks like an old electric fan. But inside, the way it works has almost completely changed. From a broken fan with a dead motor, I have built a new drive system, a new speed controller, and a different power setup. The only question left is, what will power it? And can this old fan really come back to life in a new way? Let's see the final result. Here is the power source, a 12-volt, 10-amp-hour battery. Now I turn the knob and test it. It works. What do you think?